Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 113 of my modded Factorio playthrough. Yeah, I wanted to get that research in because we actually have quite a bit to talk about the theory behind how we're going to build this next section of the base. Whenever you go big, or when you do anything in Factorio really, but especially when you build big, you want to be especially certain that your factory is as future-proof as possible. Let's get rid of that flashing. And it's not that big a deal on a smaller factory, but on a really big factory it becomes a huge ordeal to rebuild something because it's not fast enough. And it's to be expected that as your factory grows bigger you might have to rebuild things, but you want that to happen as rarely as possible. And I think a common problem or source of failure that a lot of people have with Bobs and Angels is that they don't leave their factory have enough space. They don't let their factory have enough space to expand because of how complicated it is. They build it however they build it, and then you run out of space and you need more, but you have a super complicated factory that you've already built. So how do you go about expanding? And sometimes the thought of rebuilding something is so daunting that you just either give up or start a new save, basically. So when we build this this next section, we're going to need to do a lot of consideration for not having that happen, basically, to where it's not necessarily going to be future-proof, but we want to try to make it future-proof. At least put the effort in. And just the act of knowing that it's going to be a problem and it's something we need to prepare for will probably protect us pretty well from the negative effects of it. Pretty close. Looks like we've only got 10 or 20% left. This little section right here, and just connect it right over there. Uh-oh. Red. Oh, damage. Guess we'll see. I'm kind of worried that maybe we should double, triple, or quadruple down on some of these turrets right here. Since this wall section is so short, it wouldn't be that difficult to put a ton of turrets there. Well, we'll see if that keeps happening. As long as nothing gets destroyed, it's not going to be a problem. Just clear out some of the junk. So now that we've done the research, we can place these machines down, or at least right here to give a visual of what we're trying to accomplish. So I'm expecting to build it around here. There's 3 steps basically to making resources with Bobs and Angels. The first step, as I would call it, the sorting step or the refining step, really any way you look at it, but the final machine is the sorter, where you take refined ores, like they start as just the straight up saffrite or whatever you mine off the ground, and then they go through a refining process, and then at the end they're sorted into the actual named resources like iron, copper, the things we're used to. Real things, basically, instead of saffrite and bobmonium and all of that. This is basically step number 1, and you can see in the design of the factory here, I've basically still built it this way, where things were separate. So step 1 is the refining / sorting process. We can move that saffrite over there. And then it's a little hard to tell because this stuff kind of expanded into each other. But the second step is the ingot step. So you have your named resources like iron and copper go in, and then they go through usually some kind of process. In this case, it's very simple. Just goes through an ore processor and then a blast furnace to turn it into the ingots. Now, there's a reason why this step is separate from here. And I'll explain that in a second, but The third step, the final step, is taking ingots and usually melting them down and then turning them into plates, or the more advanced versions, which we'll get into later. But basically, ingots go in, plates come out. And then once you have plates, that's the common resource that you use in Factorio. But you see how it's not necessarily a 1-to-1 ratio where, like, copper ingots make copper plates. You see, we sent copper ingots over here to make, I believe, bronze. Just as we took tin over here to make bronze as well. Now, this is pretty easy because there's not that much, but I guess you'd call that an alloy, where you use multiple ingots to make one particular resource. And it comes into play. Let's search iron. We might have already researched it. So you see the standard iron smelting that we have. It's just 12 ingots, iron ingots go out, and then we get 120 molten iron. Well, there's more advanced recipes for this. Actually, we already have it with iron smelting too, where we would mix iron with manganese or iron with silicon, so we end up using less iron. And this is a way of spreading the load around on your factory to where one particular, like if you're using a ton of one thing, like iron, like it tends to, you could spread the load between other resource types. And just like iron 3 here, we can make it with nickel and cobalt, or nickel and chrome. So you can see how complicated some of these combinations can get. There's no way that you could just send belts of ingots this way and that way and actually take advantage of that. It's going to be too complicated, and this is a very simple version and it's already kind of messy. So that's basically why I'm saying that the ingot stage is a separate step. We want it to be a separate step because all of these ingots, once they're produced, are going to go every which way and be moved all over the place. So it's considered step 2, and then step 3 is the receiving of these ingots in various quantities and then creating the necessary plates. But these two steps are actually fairly small and simple and straightforward. The complicated step is ore sorting, and it gets really complicated because you're constantly processing the same resources and refining them more and more and more. So right now what we have here is a pretty straightforward process where we have an even ratio of ore crushers to sorters. But you can't do that once the sorting and the refining gets so complicated. So each step needs to be its own unique thing. So let's do an overview. We're not worrying about ratios or numbers or anything right now. Let's just do an overview of exactly what's going to happen. Let's see, let's grab some belts. So we're going to have this belt is just going to signify resources coming in that are mined. So I think we had some extras. Yeah, let's just grab that. Not that it really matters, but just so the symbol is there. So on the way in, we're going to have our basic ores. So the first thing that happens is they get crushed. Let's actually just... This doesn't matter. This isn't a real setup, so they can just be kind of moved over there. So we can crush any of the 6, and we get a byproduct of crushed stone. But whatever, let's just say crush the sapphirite. That is sapphirite, right? Or stereotype. And then it's going to send the byproducts off. But this is like step 1. And then on the way out, we're going to have crushed sapphirite. Let's see, do we have any sorters? Yes, we do. Let's put it over here. Let's see, we're getting lots of options now. But one option is to just take the crushed stereotype, and then we would get our iron, copper, and slag. But we since changed that to instead get our actual resource that we need with no waste. So let's just say copper, that this is going to make copper. So somewhere down the line, we're going to have to siphon off resources to go here. And of course, this would require a second resource. It would require the crotinium, so that would have to come from somewhere, but this is just an example. But the important thing is that we have to siphon off resources, but then the resources will continue to the next refining phase. And that phase was going to be... There we go. We need bricks. The flotation cell, or the washing machine. Didn't I throw bricks in there, or did I put them in here? There we go. So the flotation cell basically washes them as a method to refine them. We'll set that to stereotype. So crushed stereotyte's going to come in, and so will purified water. And our output is going to be our desired output of the stereotype. I forget what those are. Alright, that's a chunk. They call those chunks. Okay. So crushed stereotyte's going to go in, and purified water, and then we're going to get our stereotype chunks, plus a byproduct of gems, and also, I believe that is sulfuric wastewater, which we're going to have to deal with. And again, we're not going to worry about that right now. Just doing this as an example. And then they're going to come out of here, and then we're going to siphon them again. Let's see, let's just place that right there. And then we're going to make something that requires chunks. So if we wanted to make, let's see. It's interesting that the only thing on this phase that actually uses them is fluorite. Aluminum doesn't use it, zinc doesn't use it, nickel or silicon doesn't use it either, but they will eventually, like it'll be used further down. Let's just say fluorite. So we're going to make fluorite with the stereotype in addition to rubite chunks and mineral catalyst. You can see how complicated just in theory this is going to be. Like resources are going to be going everywhere. So this needs to be set up from the beginning to be organized and efficient, because otherwise it's going to become giant spaghetti and then you're not going to be able to expand it, and then game over. Or just frustration. And a mineral catalyst, and then we'll get our fluorite, which we can use for things. And this basically continues. Now these are the only two refining stages we have, but you see how it continues to chemical refining, which creates a leaching plant and then gives us crystals, and then to thermal refining, which gives us our ore refinery, and then the purified resources, which is as high as it goes. So there's potentially two more stages of sorting beyond this, or of refining. But this is basically how it's going to be set up, where resources come in, they get step number 1 siphoned off, step number 2 siphoned off, step number 3 siphoned off. But since we don't have those other steps, we're going to handle this a little differently. That actually at the bottom of this logic chain is going to be another sorting facility. And we're going to directly sort those stereotype chunks, because you see how all those things we normally need, or we normally get, except this one, which I believe is cobalt. We can't make cobalt in any other way. So we're actually still going to have to do some inefficient sorting to get the rare resources that we don't have access to. So this is the logic of what's going to happen. But how would it look? Let's move over to the side here. I don't think I need the vehicle for anything, but what's it going to look like in actual physical placement? And I wanted to do this before we built the train tracks, because this kind of affects things. But basically, we're going to have a bus. I'll just... no, I'll just use the one. We're going to have a bus of all 6 resources. I'm just going to use the one belt to show that it's a bus. It's a bus that's going straight down. And it's going to be starting with our basic resources. But we need to use train tracks to get these resources in and out. And we're going to be doing it constantly along the line of the factories. You can see how we're going to be pulling off to the side. So although we could start it, we could deliver our resources through train stations up top, we're going to be constantly siphoning them off on the side. So it would probably be more symmetrical just to start the whole process with train stations on the side. So we're going to have train stations constantly on the side here, both delivering products and taking products away. And let's... So it's going to look kind of like this, where they come in and then they go down. So the first thing we're going to need to do to them is to crush them. Now we could put crushers in line as they are here, but it doesn't really let us expand that well. So instead, see, do we have any other crushers, or is that the last one? So instead we're going to siphon off on the far side here. Something like this. I'll just set that up to the stereotype again for consistency. And since we don't need the basic ore for anything, it's useless until it's been refined. It's actually going to do something like this. So it's delivered, put on the bus, and then it's taken off the bus, refined, and then put back on the bus. And then we're going to need to siphon off and sort the first few bits. Train stations really aren't that wide compared to the refining steps. So we're probably going to have various things on the left side of the bus here. Now, all of the train stations are going to be on the left side of the bus, just for consistency and for ease of use, and for some expansion reasons. It would be the best if only we had train stations on the left and we only had machines on the right. That'd be best for expansion, but the machines take up so much more space than the tracks that it would be really inefficient, just overall use of space, not to use the space that's here. So we are going to put some machines here. So to signify that, let's do this, and we'll have our copper. So we're going to siphon our copper resources off. So it would look something like this. And the bus goes down straight. And then the next step is the refining, the hydro, the flotation cell, all these different names for these things. And again, we're going to put it off to the side here. And since we don't need these resources for anything else now that we've sorted them, we're going to take all of them away and then put them back on the bus in their better, more refined state. And then again, going to siphon some of them away to make our, let's just say, fluorite in this example. Like that. And then the last bit, since the bus is going straight down, we don't want to put it straight down like that. So let's just put it off to the side. Oops. They have to be straight, even in this example. It will look something like that. So that's kind of the basic setup there. The physical orientation of things. So since we have that, we don't need to have this anymore. I was thinking I could set the robots on it, but then since the train is right there, it would probably be helping. And I don't want all these resources getting scattered all over the place. I'll just pick them up. So now that we have the overall design theory of this, and I haven't mentioned, but also we have our train tracks going in, or delivering products, but also we're going to have constant train stations all over the place, also taking products out. So this is just to mark that there's going to be a constant string of train stations, so, you know, as we're making the resources, we have to get rid of them. Because this bus is only for the refining stage, so once things have been refined and sorted, they get removed. That's all the time we have for today, so I'll see you at the next episode.